The Arranger track allows you to use a pattern structure in your projects, meaning you can arrange and remix by changing the play order with patterns or blocks of data. Let's start off with the example project. When you add an Arranger track, you can define areas of your project with the Draw tool. It's good to have Snap-on when you do this. This creates Arranger parts. You can name these parts by renaming them in the info line. Or if we have the inspector open and hold down Alt while double-clicking, we can rename them in the Arranger Events window. I'm going to rename them the same names as my markers so I don't get confused. These parts can then be arranged to play in a particular order. Make sure the inspector is turned on. The parts that you made are down here and the current play order list is here. Drag and drop the parts from the bottom into the list. To get the verse to repeat twice, simply add it twice. You can also double-click at the bottom or in the project page to add the chorus to the list. If you want to remove a part, right-click and choose Remove. You can change the number of times the verse plays by entering the number here. You're now able to play your project according to the play order list you've just made. It's good to make sure the Arranger controls are available to us. Right-click on the transport panel and add Arranger. Play order was already activated when we started to build our Arranger chain, but we can activate and deactivate it here. Notice how the cursor jumps from each play order part according to the Arranger chain. I want to mention one thing here. If you press stop and then play, Cubase will play what is in the Arranger chain, so long as the Arranger track is activated and you have returned to start position on stop selected in the transport preferences. If you press one of these arrows, it will play the Arranger event and disregard the Arranger chain. This way, you can just hear specific sections. These two things can be confusing, and if you see any of these arrows light up here, then you know it's not the Arranger chain that's playing. You can open up the Arranger editor by clicking on the E here and create as many Arranger chains as you like. Having different Arranger chains lets you try out different versions or takes before committing to a final one. Rename the current chain by pressing this button. Add another chain or duplicate the current one so that you can make changes without starting from scratch. You can then switch between different Arranger chains to see which one is best. Press Remove to delete a chain. The counter tells you which repeat you are currently at when playing, which can also be seen on the Arranger track here or on the transport here. You may need to adjust the window so you can see the song time. This shows you the total time your Arranger chain takes to play out. You can also see the duration of each part here. The mode lets you choose what happens to the event. If normal is selected, then the Arranger chain will just play as you have it set up. Repeat Forever will loop the event over and over until you click another event or just press play again. This is great for live use when you just want to stay on one section for an extended amount of time. Pause after repeats will pause after the event has played all of its repeats. Once you are done making the perfect arrangement, you can turn your chain into one big song instead of playing it as a list of patterns. This is called flattening. Click this button to flatten your Arranger list, but don't do it yet. You might want to save a copy of your project so that you have the original project with all of your parts and the newly flattened project. You can click on the Flatten options and choose which chain you're going to flatten. Most of the time, you'll just pick the current chain you're working on, but you can pick from a list and choose the chains you want, or all the chains, and it will flatten them all together. You can then decide if the newly flattened chain will be created in this project or into a new project. You can also pick the naming structure of that new project. Then you have a few options. You can decide to keep or delete the arranger track once you flatten it. Good to keep it just in case you make a mistake or want to change your mind later. You can choose to rename the arranger parts. This will append numbers to the events according to their use. This makes sense when you see the final flattened project. Normally, you will get shared copies when flattening the arranger track. If you activate this option, real copies will be created instead. Don't split events means that MIDI events that start before or are longer than the arranger event will not be included. Only MIDI events that are inside the MIDI event will be included. Normally, all of your MIDI events will be inside their MIDI parts, but sometimes you might have some parts that are played ahead of time or a little late. And finally, you can decide to open the project once you've flattened it. If you decided to make a new project as your destination, you can have it cascaded in the window so you can see the original project and the newly flattened project. See how the parts have numbers after them now? This is because we checked Rename Arranger Parts. One last thing to talk about is that the arranger can be used in a live situation. Click on the triangle here and the arranger plays the part continuously. You can then switch the parts in real time. When it's time to stop or make a quick break, you can decide how many bars or beats it will take before it stops. That can be the end of the song or just a quick break. Then you can bring it right back in. The arranger track. Now that's a powerful and cool feature.